So we have a great program on the future of work in America. I think that one of the frustrations that we've had at One Country is that when you talk about rural America to so many people who've never lived there, they like, okay, it's all about farming, it's all about agriculture, everything revolves around that. And that certainly is true. It's a big part of it, but it's also about extraction of minerals. It's also about manufacturing. It's also about, kind of creative products like one we learned about in Ada, Minnesota, where they built a whole email business, a whole business selling craft kits. And so it's just creative, innovative people. But if we are going to unite this country, we're going to have to figure out how we can revitalize and encourage the development of work opportunities that don't necessarily involve kind of traditional rural work. And so I am so excited about this panel. I think we're going to start out and do some quick introductions here of Neela Mollgaard. She's the executive director of Launch Minnesota. She is working to create an environment to support entrepreneurs and nurture tech startups with the goal of fostering innovative ecosystems across the state that draws global attention, talent, and capital. She has a proven record in this area. She is a founder of the nonprofit Red Wing Ignite, which supports entrepreneurs, businesses, and students to succeed in the 21st century economy. She's created a model in Greater Minnesota, and for those of you who don't have an accent like I do, that means outside the Twin Cities in Minnesota, that has received national attention by forging partnerships with government, academia, corporate and organizational partners, and including the creation of a regional marketplace at Minnesota State College Southeast, Golden Triangle Angel Investment Fund, a regional network to support entrepreneurs and programs to grow the talent pipeline. Neela has served in leadership roles with local nonprofits. She's a former member of the Governor's Task Force on Broadband and chairs with the founder of Women's Sense. Neela holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Wisconsin. I'm sure they forgive you for that, Neela, in Madison, and they forgive you that in Minnesota, and a master's of science in community health from West Virginia University School of Medicine. Neela, I want you just to spend a few minutes kind of offering some of your insights. Then we're going to introduce Mittie Cannon. And then we're going to go to a great roundtable that we have organized to have a discussion about how we can take some of your great ideas and your great work and multiply it and put policy initiatives in place to expand efforts, not just in Minnesota, but across the country. So Neela, take it away.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for this opportunity. It's a pleasure to join all of you today. As the Senator stated, I'm Neela Mollgaard, the Director of Launch Minnesota, an initiative of our state's Agency for Employment and Economic Development. Our offices are based in St. Paul, Minnesota, but my home for the past 20 years has been a small scenic river town located just south of the Twin Cities. I've had the honor to help create and lead Launch Minnesota, a new statewide initiative to empower and elevate Minnesota's innovation ecosystem by connecting, convening, and catalyzing efforts statewide, bringing together public and private organizations from diverse sectors and industries. We want Minnesota to be the best place to start and scale new ventures by providing access to capital, statewide connectivity, and expertise. Minnesota has a long history of being a place where good ideas begin and grow. But as a state, we recognized we needed to do more to nurture the development of startups. Cities and states that create attractive environments for entrepreneurs are quickly distancing their economies from those that don't. States that want to stay competitive in a global economy must focus on entrepreneurship. That's why our governor, state legislators, with leadership from our state agency, established Launch Minnesota just 2 years ago. This model represents the holistic approach of Launch Minnesota. Startups, innovators are at our core and are the focus, but all of these sectors are critical to build a strong, vibrant, innovative ecosystem. Launch Minnesota is serving as the front door, or that central touch point for our startup ecosystem. We are executing on 3 key goals for our entrepreneurs. First, the increasing access to capital. The next slide. Through innovation grants, tax credits, and loans, they all prioritize communities that usually lack access to capital and populations that are underrepresented, such as women, minorities, veterans, and rural communities across Minnesota. We are also working to reduce the barriers for entrepreneurs by cultivating a collaborative, connected culture to support startups at every stage of their journey. And we're developing talent, entrepreneurial talent and knowledge by ramping up education to access subject matter expertise. I'm now going to take a deeper dive into each one of these goals. We've allocated over $3 million in grants to over 100 innovative startups. This undiluted funding, next slide. This undiluted funding is so valued by our entrepreneurs. We've met only about 30% of the requests. There was over 11 million in requests. But proud to say to date, we've granted about 60% of these grants to targeted founders. And 20% have been in towns outside of the Twin Cities metropolitan area. We also have a $10 million angel tax credit program, which provides a 25% credit to investors that make equity investments in companies. We reserve $5 million, so half, specifically for targeted founders. Unfortunately, only about $3 million was utilized this calendar year. This number shows progress, but it also shows that we definitely have much more work to do to engage potential investors and innovators across the state, and especially outside of the metro area. We are also increasing access to investors for entrepreneurs across the state through purposeful outreach, statewide investor pitches, and new venture competitions. And the new SSBCI State Small Business Credit Initiative will have a tremendous impact for our state. Another goal is to simplify the startup process and reduce the barriers for entrepreneurs by cultivating a connected and collaborative culture. And the next slide shows that. We created a statewide network, the first of its kind hub and spoke model, bringing together 6 regions and over 8 hubs and over 80 program partners. We asked organizations to look beyond their city and organization and place that entrepreneur at the center to support that full life cycle of businesses and really leverage their strengths across the region. These partners include higher ed institutions, incubators, accelerators, small business development centers, SBDC offices, co-working spaces, and the local EDA groups. This network now comes together and meets on a regular cadence, leveraging programming, marketing efforts, and funding. They are customizing their local offerings, but also accessing statewide best practices and resources. Due to the creation of this launch network, we entered a competition sponsored by the U.S. Small Business Administration, which resulted in Minnesota receiving the SBA Super Connector Award, along with 4 other initiatives across the nation. The SBA has identified that a connected and coordinated ecosystem is beneficial to entrepreneurship. The next slide shows some essential elements that I've seen. In addition to building a strong quality of life in communities, the partners I work with, and when I see the regional efforts, what's working and what's not, these are the elements that are always consistent. Obviously, high speed, gigabit broadband, local champions that wake up every day thinking about how they can serve their startup community and foster innovation, funding for entrepreneurial support orgs, but also the businesses that are launching, and a place to gather, a regular meeting spot that could be a co-working space, an accelerator program, a monthly meetup, and then obviously strong partnerships in higher education is a key piece of that. Our next goal is we work with our program partners to help entrepreneurs with the know-how to start a business and bring ideas to reality. On this slide, you can see that we've trained about 900 entrepreneurs, startups, and leaders in lean startup methodology since April of 2020. We have worked with the University of Minnesota to leverage what they offer, that they used to only offer to their faculty and their students, and now it's accessible to entrepreneurs across Minnesota. We've also created a partnership with the University of Minnesota. They are our statewide partner to leverage their expertise and their one-to-one business advisors and subject matter expertise to help our innovation grantees succeed at a faster pace. Just yesterday, one of our startups from Greater Minnesota, so outside of the Twin Cities metropolitan area, was accepted into the Discovery Launchpad MN program. he would have never had this opportunity prior to this initiative. We created also the Minnesota Exchange. It's a platform powered by Kinetic, one of our local startups and innovation grantee, to help entrepreneurs find the right connections at the right time, no matter where they live. And we are establishing industry partners and a process to connect innovators to the experts and the resources in that industry specifically. As the senator mentioned, we have a lot of strong industries from health tech and ag tech, clean energy in Minnesota. And we want to make sure that no matter where you live in Minnesota, you're connected to that expertise. As a testament to our traction in community support, the Minnesota state legislators have reauthorized the funding for Launch Minnesota for 4 more years. We've shown the return on investment and involvement. Moving startups and technology forward is one of our key progress over the first biennium. 100% of our grantees have mentioned that their startup and technology has moved forward, and I think that is just an incredible testament to how important these dollars and resources are. We've also leveled the playing field with increased access, opportunity, and funding to founders that are underrepresented. And we've amplified Minnesota's startup community and the role that they play in our economy. Sometimes there's a challenge because these startups and emerging technology, it's hard to see. And it's not like a main street business where you can walk in and purchase items. So we need to amplify that message more, how these new technologies are really changing the way that we work and we learn and live. If we take a specific lens now to rural communities and how Launch Minnesota and our efforts have helped in rural communities, it's through connectivity, capacity, and increasing competitiveness. With this increased connectivity, startups can grow more efficiently and effectively with access to funding, investors, talent, education, customers, locally, regionally, and statewide. And the capacity for entrepreneurial support orgs to start and scale new ventures increase by creating the needed density. There is knowledge sharing with data and events and services that they provide, and the ability for them to save time with programming. When you think about hosting programs and competitions and office hours, they don't need to do it alone. And last, rural communities need to stay competitive in our global economy. People can live where they want, and they pick communities that provide that fertile soil to grow. Communities that are being proactive will reap the benefits, and it was fun to see one of our hubs, Greater Bemidji, luring remote workers in an article from the Wall Street Journal just recently. In closing, here's what I know to be true. Governments play a role. We have the ability to fill gaps in the ecosystem that other organizations cannot or aren't incentivized to fill. And there is opportunity for all. We need to cut the red tape for entrepreneurs by putting their needs first. Entrepreneurs need clear pathways to the people and resources. We've seen the difference greater connectivity, dollars, and education makes. It levels the playing field of our unrepresented businesses. And I have seen firsthand that innovation isn't limited to the coast or our urban settings. With the right elements, innovation can and does happen anywhere, including rural America. Thanks for your time and the ability to share a little bit about Launch Minnesota.
You know, before I introduce our next speaker, Neela, I don't know if you're still on, but I'm curious. You know, so much of us, what we've done in the past as it relates to economic development. I mean, we've been doing this a lot in rural America. I mean, from the time that I served as state tax commissioner and as attorney general, I'm wondering about the metrics on success. I think people in rural America, it's like, here we go again, yet another program. And how do you convince rural America and rural Americans that, yes, that things can change, that these aren't just programs that will not I wouldn't say fail, but will not yield the results that we all hope from. When we look at the demographic information that we're going to be presenting during the summit, we know we continue to lose population. And with every loss of population, we lose hope. And so how do we convince people that efforts like yours can be incredibly successful?
Well, it's a really important question. First of all, I think we have to set expectations, right? We have short-term goals, but a long-term vision. The technology that we're developing take time to develop. It's not going to be an overnight, in a month, have a new business with a shiny awning. These are different types of businesses, and they need different tools to launch. But what it is setting those short-term goals, and it's setting and showing the wins. We've learned from our innovation grantees, from the dollars that we've given through grants, they've already raised that in private capital 2.5 times to 4 times more than we as taxpayers have given them in taxpayer dollars. They've already hired 15 to 38 FTEs, and that's just in a small sampling of some of our 6-month progress reports. But locally, the incredible part about Launch Minnesota is this connectivity from corner to corner, and we're working with those entrepreneurial support orgs now to collect data. This is the first time our state has been able to do this. How many entrepreneurs are they speaking with? What are the entrepreneur needs? How are they providing service? Is it through education, like I mentioned, or office hours? And really trying to provide those tools to create that fertile soil in greater Minnesota. We've already seen people leaving metro areas now with remote work to utilize the beauty and the different types of living in more rural areas of our state. And so there's multi-factors. But once again, it's short-term goals with a long-term vision. It's sharing our stories, and it's showing how the technology that's being developed and the businesses that are being developed are truly changing the way that we work and learn and live. They are solving some of the big challenges that we face within our state, our nation, and globally.
Yeah, and the thing that we need to constantly remind people: look, we don't need 1,000 jobs in Hankinson, North Dakota. We need 50 or 60 jobs in Hankinson, North Dakota, and that has an outsized impact in rural America. And success breeds success. The more successful we are in creating a business entrepreneurial environment and ecosystem, the more people are going to say, hey, it's a great place to live, great golf courses, great recreation, the schools are terrific, and I want to live there. And so I'm going to bring my business there, or I'm going to create a business so I can live there. And so, hope is there. It's just that we've been at this a long time. And I think people think, well, there's never going to be an opportunity for me. And that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm going to go ahead and turn to Dr. Mittie Cannon. She has been engaged in workforce development in the construction industry, which is going to be so critical with hopefully the passage of Build Back Better and the infrastructure for over 2 decades. Over the years, she's recognized that statistically, the construction industry was consistently challenged to pull in a qualified and diverse workforce, specifically industry's overwhelming deficit in female employees. Whether you know this or not, I have worked in construction, both gluing water pipe and in road construction. So I know that I was the only woman frequently on those job sites. So recognizing this critical shortage, Dr. Cannon has developed a passion for exposing young women to careers in construction through innovative programming. She initially ran summer camps for young women to expose them to careers in the construction industry. In 2015, Dr. Cannon began envisioning a program that would introduce young women and their mothers to exciting careers in construction. To ensure success in her programming, she sought out partnerships with industry leaders who also had expressed a desire to bring about a more diverse construction workforce. Dr. Cannon leaned on her community, construction industry, and educational connections. In October of 2015, a collaborative partnership was formed to present a signature program, Power Up. It's a mother-daughter thing. Since its inception, the signature program has had tremendous success. Over 800 attendees, employer partnerships, training providers, and higher education institutions. Dr. Cannon, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for the continued work that you're doing in workforce development and bringing women to the construction industry. I know a lot of people are very curious about your success.
Thanks, and thanks for having me. Just want to say thanks for this opportunity, because it is important that as we move forward, that we don't forget about rural America. because I'm a personal believer that that's where our greatest opportunity of an untapped resource for the workforce will come from, is rural America. It's a matter of us educating them about what the opportunities are. And so that's in part of why I put together this initiative, Power Up, which is a nonprofit designed, just what you said, to educate, engage, and to help individuals to explore careers in the construction industry, which represents my passion. I am a tradeswoman. I came from the electrical and welding trades, where I learned to navigate the process of entering the industry and learning more about what it takes to be successful, and to also learn about the lucrative career opportunities that are in the construction industry. And once I had a taste of that, I have not been able to shake it, because I was on a path to go to med school. And once I was exposed to the construction industry, I knew then what my calling was. And so I have been on a path since then to go out and to create more opportunities to educate and to tell women, young women, and minorities about the unlimited opportunities that exist in the construction industry. And so Power Up is a mother-daughter thing, is a signature program of Power Up. And what we want to do there is to educate mothers and daughters as a team to spend quality time together in an evening of where they are exposed to successful women who have walked this journey, been exposed to the construction industry, and have enjoyed a lucrative career in construction. And so these women offer their time and their services by coming to an event and networking with these mother and daughter teams and educating them about what their journey was like and what they endured along the way. Also, we create an opportunity for them to network with contractors. These are construction companies that promote these positions that we're showcasing as career opportunities in the construction industry. So the contractors are also in partnership with Power Up, and they're there to show their support by having individuals from their companies to be there to answer questions that the parents and the child may have in regards to what are the educational requirements, what's the pay, what are the benefits, what are some of the job roles, what are some of the functions of what some of these skilled professionals may perform. Most times people think that working in construction means digging ditches and hammering nails. Although that may be the case, and that may be some of the tasks that you perform, there's a lot more to it than what you see. There's a lot more to what you've heard, because there are a lot of misconceptions out there. It takes a world of people in order to make the construction industry what it is. Not only are we looking for skilled people such as pipe fitters, electricians, and carpenters, who are all great mathematicians, but we're also looking for professional people such as, business people, accounting people, accounts payable. We're looking for medical staff people, because it takes all of that to make our world what it is. There's a lot of great things that come out of the construction industry. And because people are not educated and have the knowledge and familiar with who we are as an industry, then we're not oftentimes looked at as a career option. So that is what Power Up does, is we introduce parents to that opportunity so that they can become educated, be engaged, and be able to explore all of the careers that are in the construction industry. We also include in our mother-daughter event an opportunity to partner with educational institutions or training providers. They come in, they set up, and they're there to answer questions and to share with parents and their daughters about what we offer or what's required as far as educational requirements. Those parents who were just committed to my child must go to college, must have a degree, that is perfectly fine, because the construction industry is also looking for those individuals who are degreed engineers. We're looking for safety professionals that have degrees. We need nurses. So we need all kinds of degreed, certificate, and skilled individuals to work in our industry. And so we don't discount anyone in the construction industry. We are an industry that has open arms, and we invite all of those because there's something there for everyone. And we recognize that. But our challenge is, just like with any other market, we have to make sure that we provide the programming in place that will help people to become educated about the opportunities. And that is why I found that it was so important that I started Power Up, so that there would be an opportunity for me as a tradeswoman to go out there and to help make a difference by educating and using the most powerful tool that we have to help create a pipeline to bring more women and more tap resources of individuals into the construction industry. So being in the construction industry as a tradeswoman has been a very lucrative career for me, has been very successful. The industry, I tell people all the time, treats me like a queen. They have been really good to me because I've had the opportunity of, benefiting from some of the better benefits of the industry. I can travel anywhere I want, have anything I want, because I did make that choice and I didn't knock it because I explored it and I became educated about it. And now that I have the skill sets that I have, there are things that I can do at my home now that I can save myself money. I can do things around the house and I've got the skill set to do it. If I don't know how to do it, I know how to go research it. I can pull a book off the shelf. I can refer back to some of my training. I can call an old instructor. And that's a beauty for me. That's a huge advantage and that's a benefit. And so I want to empower women, not just women, but just people, period. I want to empower them with what they could use as an opportunity to explore a lucrative career in the construction industry because of all the benefits. There's the travel, there's the great income because the wages are great. I'm sure, Ms. Heidi, you can speak to that because I'm sure that you are a tradeswoman yourself, sounds like. So you know exactly what I'm talking about all the wonderful benefits.
Dr. Cannon, people always ask me, how did you end up with these summer jobs where you worked road construction and you worked bluing pipe and putting in rural water systems? I said, it paid a lot better than babysitting. And I was outside all the time and and I learned skills. But one of the things that I want to ask you about is you've spent a lot of time now visiting with women, visiting with young girls. What are the barriers that there are self-imposed? What's their mindset? Is it, I'm not physically capable of doing it. I haven't had the training. That's not something I'm interested in. What do you think are the top impediments to women getting involved in construction trades?
It's all of the above and more. One year I had an event. It was a mother-daughter power up. It's a mother-daughter thing. And a young lady who was very hesitant about coming, her mom convinced her to come. So they showed up as a mother and daughter team because mom's required to be there or Mr. Mom. We don't believe in dropping the kids off, coming back by and picking them up. It's a time that mom and daughter must spend together, spending time, decision-making, managing their time, exploring and being educated about the industry. So this young lady had written her essay, which is a part of the application process to come to the event. And she shared in her essay that she didn't think that this was something for her because, she likes to get her nails done. She likes to wear makeup. And she just wanted to be in a career that allowed her to be girly. And so that's what she expressed in her essay. Well, she attended the event and she made it her business to find me and ask me if it was possible that she could resubmit her essay because she had no idea that what she had been exposed to in those 3 hours would have made her feel the way she felt. And at that point, she had decided that she wanted to consider a career in construction because she didn't realize that you had so many opportunities and she would also still be able to be girly and do the girl things that she enjoyed so much doing. So to answer your question, a lot of times, people dismiss it because one, they really don't know what it entails. They haven't really done their homework and really explored all the different opportunities that are there because they're unlimited. So not having the knowledge and not being connected to those individuals or those resources to provide those that information that one would need when considering a possible career choice. So, they think that it's too hot, it's dangerous, it's dirty, but I tell people, it's dangerous in your home. We're all guilty of using a chair or standing on a counter to reach something. And that's not a safe way to do it. And how many times do you hear about people falling in their own homes, suffering from head injuries because they're being unsafe? The one thing about the industry, we teach people to be safe because safety is number one with us. So we take away that component by providing you with all the necessary training to be safe because we want people to go home to their families every day. So knowledge and education is, those are the key to helping people to realize that this is an option for them to look at.
Yeah, when I was gluing pipe, we pushed 6-inch pipe for a rural water system, and my coworker who was stringing pipe with me was a 230-pound football player. So I'm not a small person, but I'm not 230 pounds and 6'2". And, everybody was like, well, he can help you do this. And I thought, no, he's not going to help me do this. But I learned, and I think people in the construction industry will learn, women who go in, that men frequently use their brawn when they should be using their brain. And there's a better way to do it. And there's adaptations that will give you incredible opportunities. And these are folks that make incredibly good wages. And we know with this infrastructure package coming that this is a real opportunity. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't look at raising the wages of people who help people who work in nursing homes, who do more traditional women's work. But here is an alternative that I don't think women have considered. And those of us who have worked in the construction industry know, number one, it's fun. You feel really accomplished when you see that road go down, or you see I once helped frame a house. You get that sense of, wow, I helped build that. But you also, so there's a lot of work satisfaction, but people should not be afraid of feeling like they're not strong enough, because now there are so many new techniques, and really better through the safety programs and through the healthcare programs to save your back. We aren't doing things the way we used to do things, and women can do it. And I think what's so smart, Dr. Cannon, that you've done is you've involved the moms. Because when the moms can see that, oh no, you've got to go to college, you've got to do this, and they can see that, no, you could have a trade, have a very stable life, have a very, very good, almost upper middle class life without spending and investing a lot of money and time in college. And that is a growing industry as we look at repairing our depleted infrastructure. I think your program is fascinating, and I'm so excited that you've been able to join us. I'm going to give you a chance for some last comments, and then we're going to initiate our panel. So do you have anything else, Dr. Cannon, to share with us?
I think I'll say it for the panel.
Okay, good.
Here, and thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, no, it's wonderful to see people who take the bull by the horns, as you have, and said, look, I found out there's a path here that can be so important for young girls to have really a more diverse economic opportunity, and to go ahead and bring all of that together in the end. And so we're going to transition to the panel. I think the better part here would be for people to turn on their cameras, and I'm going to introduce the folks that are going to be joining us, joining Dr. Cannon and Neela as we move into this panel. Gabe Horwitz directs Third Way's economic program, and you'll be hearing a lot about Third Way. They're a great partner for One Country. He has also had experience in the private sector. And so we're going to have Gabe join us, and Matt Dunne from the Center on Rural Innovation. It is with great help and great pride that we've initiated this program. This is really one of my favorite parts of the summit, because it is so critical to developing rural America. So why don't we go ahead right now and jump into maybe some of the questions. I want to first start out by saying, way too often, in my opinion, when you talk about this issue, the first place people go to is broadband. It's almost like, oh, if we just build it, it will automatically happen, and that will solve all our problems. And I think it's typical that we always think if we build something, they'll come. And we certainly cannot do what we want to do without broadband, without expanding capacity, without all the things that we know are absolutely essential to put rural America on the forefront of modern technology and modern opportunity. But beyond broadband, if you had a wish list, any one of you, and I think we'll start with Dr. Cannon, and anybody can jump in after she's done. If we have a wish list for kind of what that second ask would be of a senator, let's put broadband off to the side, to provide additional employment opportunities and workforce development in rural America, what would it be? And so, Dr. Cannon, we're going to turn to you first on the panel.
So I'm going to be a little selfish about that response. And I'm going to speak from personal experience. Being a small nonprofit with all the credentials, all the training programs, national credentials that I offer and provide, qualified skilled professionals to facilitate the training. The challenge that I run into most oftentimes is at the application process for funding. It is a huge challenge for me because as a nonprofit that's small and all of my programming is done as an in-kind, and any donations that I'm provided or given, which is typically private foundations or private donations, go back into the business in order to continue to fund programming. So I have no staff. Everybody is a volunteer. I volunteer all of my time, and all of my volunteers give up their time and services as well, which is very important in order for me to sustain. And because I'm so small, I don't have all of what it takes, like with a larger nonprofit that's more established, to be looked at for some of the funding resources that are out there. And so that's a challenge. And I speak not just for Power Up and programs like Power Up, but I want to take this moment to speak for any and all programs that are smaller programs that have the capabilities, but we just may not have everything that's required through the application process. I mean, we're 501c3. We've been recognized. Like I said, we have all the certifications. We have all the credentials. We're boots on the ground. We're right there in those rural communities. But we just don't function on the level that some of the larger organizations, and I feel like there's a bias there in the application process. And that is what I struggle with because I'm turned down so many times. And if it wasn't for certain associations, private organizations, I would not be able to exist in 7 states on the island of Guam. And I'm in conversations right now with the Cayman Islands. It's because of private funds. I struggle trying to get other type of funding because I don't have the resources that larger, more established organizations have. And that's my ask is, what is it? I'm not asking to lower the standards or to lower the requirements or to water anything down. I'm just asking if smaller organizations are given a harder look and maybe working more closely with them, learning more about what it is that they can offer and what can organizations or leadership do at the government level that could help these smaller nonprofits who may not have all those resources that established larger ones do to help get them over that hurdle. Because it's almost like this, when you get to college and you graduate, if nobody hires you, you can't get the experience. And everybody wants they want you to have experience. If I'm never given these opportunities, I'm not going to be able to create the outcomes, but I can create them, but I'm creating them because I'm doing it at my own expense or the expense of these private donations.
Yeah, well, I hope, Dr. Cannon, that what we're going to see is a lot of people interested in your program after this. Shelly, I'm sorry, my internet's coming in and out after I diss the broadband piece of this. And so Shelly runs a great program on the future of work for the Aspen Institute, something that I've participated in. What would be your one request, Shelly?
Yes, thank you. We've appreciated your engagement with the initiative before. I would center, in addition to broadband, I live in a rural area and I'm at a public library right now because I don't have broadband access at home. So these, that challenge is front and center in my own life as well as my work. Another piece that's really central here that sometimes falls out of the conversation, although it's pretty basic, is job quality. And we need good jobs so that no matter what training programs are out there, developing high-tech digital skills, equipping workers for certain careers, that those lead to jobs and lead to jobs that exist in their communities. So really any policies that both promote job quality and facilitate those connections between training and education systems and those good jobs are worth investing in. And to build on Dr. Cannon's point, it's often small, local, on-the-ground organizations that have that insight into where the good jobs in a community are. Wondering if maybe I should pass it to Matt to answer this question while we wait for everyone to get connected.
Happy to, Shelly, as the senator is proving the point of why broadband is necessary, although not sufficient, right? Which I think is very much her point. And so I'm Matt Dunne. I'm the founder and executive director of the Center on Rural Innovation. We're an action tank that's focused on closing the rural opportunity gap. We've had the privilege of being able to work with many communities, including with Neela in her previous position in Red Wing, Minnesota, one of the leading rural communities in the country for bringing high-speed internet and then figuring out the so what afterwards. And that's where we focus. Here's why we founded the organization in 2017. It's because the recovery from the 2008 recession was uneven. Urban places came roaring right back, and rural places did not. And in fact, even as late as January of 2020, not even half of rural counties were back up to their pre-recession levels. And you can trace that back to automation, globalization, and the decline of entrepreneurship in the 30 years previous to the 2008 recession in rural America. And that combination of things meant that there were beneficiaries of automation and globalization, and those were almost exclusively cities. And there were people who were negatively impacted by those two forces, and those were almost exclusively rural places. And so you ended up with rural America representing 15% of the nation's workforce, but only 5% of the computer and math jobs. Those jobs that actually attract all kinds of resources because they are the core of those automation jobs. They import cash and export value. And you know what? If you have a great broadband connection, there is no limit to where computer and math jobs and digital economy jobs in general can take place. And the same with entrepreneurs. Shelly, to your point, one of the focuses that we have is not just going in and saying, oh, we can do coding training and that will solve all the problems in rural places once they have broadband. Because what we found is that, folks in rural communities, if you just do that, really take to coding and software training very well, and then they move. And that doesn't actually solve the problem. So you have to simultaneously be unlocking the incredible entrepreneurial spirit and the ideas that entrepreneurs have that are in rural places or from rural places and excited to come home and realize that vision in a real way. So we work with forward-thinking rural communities like Red Wing to be able to build those kinds of ecosystems of future economy jobs. And that includes, of course, making sure you're doing the job training for future jobs, for the types of computer software and data science and cybersecurity jobs that we know folks can do and will create really good, high-paying jobs, but also supporting accelerators and tech transfer opportunities so that you can have new entrepreneurial jobs to be able to grow, and then connecting the two together, as well as connecting technology jobs to local tech hirers that may not realize that there's tech talent nearby. We find over and over again in rural communities that the bank and the hospital hires cybersecurity and computer software engineers and others, but they assume that there isn't anyone around who can do that job. So they go hire out of Chicago and San Francisco and Brooklyn for many times the actual cost that they would have to by keeping those jobs local and keeping that tech ecosystem really going so that there can be a flywheel that supports the whole. So that's what we work on. And what I would say to anyone in elective office is invest in that entire ecosystem. It's not an either or proposition. Broadband is not going to solve all of our problems on its own. You got to get it. Otherwise, you can't have great panels like this, functioning well. But also, you can't participate in the global marketplace without it today. But you need to be investing in those tech training programs. You need to be investing in public-private partnerships, connecting to institutions of higher education, and you need to be investing in the kinds of supports for accelerators and investment opportunities that entrepreneurs in rural places that want to do scalable tech companies can really grow and thrive.
You haven't had an opportunity yet to share your experience and maybe your ideas, Gabe, on what advice you would give to rural development professionals and what advice you would give to policymakers as we look at building back better in rural America, and especially in this space.
Absolutely. I think we can all agree that if you're given one wish, you would take the route that my son would probably say, which is, will you wish for more wishes? That's an obvious thing, because there's not one single thing. I think we've all seen this. But I will give you just one, and it builds off, frankly, what we've heard a lot of today. And that's, we've talked about the need for skills and for training. And I think so often in Washington, D.C., policymakers will say, well, yeah, that just means more college. And sure, college is fine. 2 or 4 year colleges are fine for some people, but a lot of other people want other options. And what I would love to see, if I could have one wish, is I would love to see a national apprenticeship system. And that really spreads this earn and learn model everywhere across the country and spreads it to far more industries. And what I would encourage folks to think about when we're doing this is, everyone talks about Germany. Everyone loves German apprenticeships. That's what the buzz is. But I would actually encourage people to look at Switzerland, because Switzerland has this great model, and they're called hubs or intermediaries. And what happens is they bring the workers, they bring the educators, and they bring businesses together. And because businesses say, look, I want to have apprenticeships, but I don't know what the program should look like. And educators say, well, I have a curriculum, but I don't know what business I should work with. And individuals are saying, I just want skills. Can someone figure this out for me and give me the opportunity to have a good program so I can get a good job? Switzerland has these hubs all over the country, and it's really created a lot more apprenticeships, a lot more training, and frankly, a lot more good middle-class jobs. If we had that here on a nationwide scale, it would create so much more economic opportunity in rural America. We're seeing pockets. There are certain examples in this town or in this county, but we need to see it at a much bigger scale. So I want more wishes, but I will just start with that and we can keep the conversation going.
Yeah, I tell a story about having 500 high school students in a room, close-up students, and I was a senator, and I was talking about economic opportunities, and I said, how many of you are going to college? And they all raised their hand, right? And I said, well, how many of you are going to be a plumber? And just one little lonely hand goes up out of nowhere. And I said, I want you all to look at him, because he's going to be the richest guy in this room. And they all shrugged their shoulders. And I said, because I know you're all going to need a plumber. Right. And I've got a great story about Langdon, North Dakota, where somebody went into the high schools. He was having a hard time recruiting students, went into the high schools and began to hire and with good wages during the summer, ran his own kind of apprenticeship, no government involvement. And now he has one of the largest regional plumbing companies in North Dakota because he recruited that workforce right out of high school or in high school. And so there's a lot of great models out there, but they're not institutionalized the way they need to. And so, Gabe, thanks so much. Neela, on this question, you get the last word on the panel. You get your one wish. You've been doing this for a lot of years. What's your one wish?
Well, I have to say, Gabe's son's pretty wise. I think I echo what has been said. I think when I talk to individuals in rural communities across the state, and I'm actually at a conference right now, the Startup Champion Network conference. And so I've been talking to ecosystem builders for the last 2 days. There are really similar pain points with everybody I talk to. And that is the individuals in the ecosystem that are trying to deliver the right skills and make those connections, have those trainings, that expertise to launch businesses. while they're serving those businesses, they're also in a fighting to keep their own lights on, right, and keep their organizations running. So there is it's a challenging place for the organizations that are launching new businesses, trying to be there to serve new businesses, that it is challenging. I know the EDA, through the EDA grant, has been fabulous and has helped so many people. And I know Corey's a huge resource for that. So those are really great steps. But I would be remiss if I didn't advocate for some of the, or share some of the feedback that I hear constantly. And then also for our startup businesses and our new technologies, I think it's this undiluted funding, and I think the SSBCI dollars are going to make a tremendous, hopefully, really leave a legacy in our states and be truly impactful. So I think that's an incredible opportunity that we look forward to implementing in Minnesota.
Well, one of the questions that I get asked, because, obviously opportunities to meet a lot of people in the financing world, serving on the banking committee and a lot of people in the agricultural community. And they always say, well, what can we help to revitalize America? And I said, first thing you need to do is believe in it. And the second thing you need to do is invest in it. So let's talk about investment. Let's talk about those public-private partnerships that Dr. Cannon was so eloquently pulled together. On funding, how do you get that private capital to build that sustainability? I mean, we always talk about government funding, but if you don't have a Bank of North Dakota like we do in North Dakota, which is designed for economic development, how do you create sustainability within the funding community to not only fund ongoing and middle-sized projects, but to continue that funding in tougher times without automatically assuming the government's going to come to the rescue? And I'll just let anyone jump in with that, with answers that they have. Matt, I think you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Just an interesting example that we've taken on. One of the things we heard when we were going out and working with these great communities that were standing up accelerators and had tech startups in rural places was they couldn't get investors, venture capitalist investors, to even look, to even show up. They didn't believe that there could be something there. So we actually worked with the Economic Development Administration on a little-known program called the Capital Challenge, which provides operating support to stand up investment vehicles in places where money is not flowing to be able to support growing, scalable companies. And so we received that funding, and we were able to raise a $5 million seed fund specifically to invest in scalable tech companies in rural opportunity zones. And it was exciting. We weren't sure what was going to happen, right? If people would actually come and participate. But we got this wonderful spectrum of limited partner investors from all kinds of different places, many on the coast, right? Or many who are not in rural America, but said, all right, we're going to take a bet that you're going to be able to find really, really smart entrepreneurs that are out there. And they put money into the pool, and we're deploying that capital now to rural Missouri and to rural Colorado and rural Vermont. And it's having a profound impact because those companies, once they get that first investment, are frequently able to complete their round from local sources. Because there are people with capacity nearby, but they don't recognize necessarily a tech company as a place where they would know how to invest. So just being able to make that small, early investment allowed for those companies to raise millions of dollars to be able to realize their product development and actually bring it to market. So that's an example of a small, relatively small Economic Development Administration program that's unlocking a lot of investment capital to come in, which then in turn unlocks more investment capital for these startups explicitly in rural places that have been struggling to transition to a post-manufacturing era.
So I'd like to add to that. So I've been fortunate that because of the work that I've done in the industrial construction industry, and I'm pretty well known in heavy industrial throughout the U.S., because of my role that I've played at the Associated Builders and Contractors. I've held national positions with them. and also the National Center for Construction Education and Research. And so it's because of organizations like that and their members that has maintained my sustainability. And so when you have companies and organizations of such and their members, their bandwidth is throughout the US, these contractors, they may be based in Alabama, but they may be working, on the West Coast, Midwest, wherever. So when they go into communities, they believe in giving back. They believe in building the community and making the community better. That's a part of the Merit Shop philosophy. And because of that, that's how I've been able to provide programming in the rural communities that I have been in, because those contractors will share their love and allow me to take that love and I can go elsewhere and implement programming. So that's how I've been able to maintain since 2016 when I launched the first initiative. And not only am I, providing training opportunities for these middle school girls through high school and their moms, but I'm teaching kindergartners how to use power tools, hand tools, diversity and inclusion, introducing them to careers in construction and engineering. Because if we don't do it early, the streets will do it and we will lose them. I'm not interested in learning how we use the performance of third grade students to determine the number of bed cells that go into a prison. I want to learn how we can take that information and determine how many plumbers, pipe fitters, and electricians we can train. That's what I'm on a mission for. So we have to start early too. But it's because of the private donations and foundations from companies that has kept me afloat.
Shelly, in your experience at Aspen, have you spent a lot of time talking about entrepreneurship? We know that small business is a huge engine for employment opportunities and growth. If we promote entrepreneurship, you end up with things like Bobcat in Winter, North Dakota, only there because the people who invented it, the entrepreneurs who did it, are there. In your work at Aspen, how much of that do you focus on getting the capital and getting the investment that needs to come to entrepreneurship to grow economic opportunity?
Yeah, entrepreneurship is, the driver of economic growth, economic development. That's true anywhere. That's especially true in rural areas. And there's the capital investment that we're talking about and that we need. And there's also the other aspects of investment and learning and building social networks and connecting people who have a great idea in North Dakota with people who are doing similar things and have done similar things elsewhere. Building those communities, which ties back to some of the potential for, broadband and internet and virtual-based things, building communities of practice and learning communities across rural areas and across all areas around the country is more possible now than ever, but it doesn't happen on its own. So I think that's, one of the things that we're thinking about is how to make those connections, make sure that the people who have those great ideas, who are building those great businesses, no matter where they are, have not only the financial investments, but also those learning opportunities and are a part of those communities where they can grow and develop together.
I think that the great wish over time for investment has been, requiring the banks to actually look at community and development, being, kind of that, the whole regulatory kind of thing. But so much of the startup, so much of that initial investment isn't coming from traditional kind of bank loans. It's not, and many of our entrepreneurs want equity partnerships. They don't want to burden themselves with additional loans. And so that equity partnership piece of it is the piece that I worry about in rural America. Gabe, have you seen the same kind of thing, or do you think I overstate my case?
No, you don't at all. And the numbers are gross. It's something like 70% of VC dollars go to 3 states, basically go to 5 metro areas. And it's just completely shutting out entrepreneurs in rural America. I think there's kind of 2 roles for government here. And you talked about investment. I think the point that Matt made is really interesting. Government is seeding funds. They've been pretty small right now, but I didn't know that about EDA. I think what gets talked about a lot is, and I forget who used the acronym, but SSBCI. There was a program a decade ago where the federal government gave states money and states could then either set up equity funds or seed equity funds to help small businesses in their state. And so that was able to get some equity capital out. That program was just revitalized in the American Rescue Plan. And look, I think there's a lot of people who are really bullish on that. So I think the government can do more to help seed VC funding, but it can also make sure that the established VCs right now are paying attention to parts of the country that, frankly, they're not looking at right now. And what does that mean? Well, if I'm investing in a business and I want to put equity capital, I want to make sure that that area, that business, they have a skilled workforce, that they have infrastructure, that they have a revitalized downtown so they can attract talent and attract suppliers and other partners. And so we can be doing a lot to pump funding into these rural areas to make them more attractive for VC, to make them more notable. And I think, we do this on a small scale and we do this well certain areas, but we need to do it on a much bigger scale and much more spread across the country.
I don't think there's any doubt about it. And the shaming that we've all tried to do when we look at those numbers, and I've actually seen numbers as high as 80% have gone to 3 metro areas.
I think it's 80. I think I misspoke.
Yeah.
So you're right.
Yeah, no, that's okay. But I mean, and 70, 80, what difference does it make when we're only seeing the crumbs? And we've relied on shaming, right? How dare you ignore us, and it just feeds into that rural narrative that we're the flyover country, that we're the forgotten people, that no one cares about us. The other thing that I think there is an opportunity, there's a lot of people who've made a lot of money in rural America, and kind of asking them to reinvest in their communities, to give a business a chance. The businesses that I know that have been successful have relied on families. They've relied on the local banker who said, yeah, we'll take a chance on you. And it shouldn't be catch as catch can. If you have a good idea and you're going to create an opportunity and then we're going to train for that opportunity, people can live at home. Neela, what do we do? You've worked in Minnesota. Minnesota is a great progressive kind of community. You guys have a vibrant tech industry in Minneapolis. You have a lot of diversity in your businesses. What pitch do you make to get VC venture capital into rural Minnesota?
Well, being with the state government, I think one of my roles is to help incentivize the change we want to see, right? So in our innovation grants, we have $3 million over the next 2 years to allocate. We require a 1-to-1 private match. So our state might give up to $35,000 grant, let's say, and then that incentivizes other private investments. So, it's leveraging that investment 2-to-1, which I think we've seen really good results with. But as it was brought up, we also, that connectivity across the state is really important, so that our entrepreneurs across the state, not just in the metro, where because of the density, a lot of the VCs and investors go, that we make sure that we can funnel and create that pathway, that pipeline for entrepreneurs and innovators across the state to have those same connections. And so we're working on that pretty purposefully. But when I talk to corporate innovators, when I talk to other investment venture capitalists or angel investors, what they really they want similar to what we want, right? They're seeking new talent. They're seeking the latest in technology. They want to be part of this because they know this is changing the way that our a game changer for our economy. It's the right thing to do to have a thriving ecosystem. So there is definitely those alignment of goals and alignment of vision with our investors that we leverage. The other part, though, when we're talking about rural Minnesota, or rural America, is just the education that there is that individuals or high net worth individuals can be an investor, a limited partner, an angel fund, join an angel fund. They don't realize that their dollars, can launch a business, keep a business in their town, hire new staff. That impact of investing in our emerging technologies and emerging businesses and that role that it plays in community building, that we need to be louder about the benefits of being an investor.
With the time that I have left, let's turn, we're all talking about construction. We're talking about what is going to be the kind of economic opportunities in the next 10 years that can be drivers, and how does rural America participate? The big driver there is going to be green technologies, new kinds of this transition to a low carbon economy. One of the challenges that we have in rural America is that we have a high employment ratio of people who work in the fossil industry. They're at power plants that maybe generate electricity using coal as legacy plants, or natural gas, or maybe they're working the rigs in North Dakota or in New Mexico, and they're all rural. These are really rural places, or they're working the copper mines, in Nevada. And so, how do we begin to look at those industries and that workforce and realize that these things are going to change? Their opportunities are going to change. What advice would you give to excuse me, to, let's say, the mayor of Williston, North Dakota, who is looking at this saying, excuse me, that my community needs to think about the next 20 years, maybe not in the next 10, but the next 20. What advice would you give? And I want to start with you, Shelly, because you kind of have looked maybe a broader scope on your work at Aspen.
Sure. And as a former resident of Williston, North Dakota, I would love to sit down with the mayor again. I think one of the things that needs to change is actually just how we talk about this challenge, because the promise of green jobs actually is great for rural America. When we look at where the numbers are, there's actually 1.5 times more green energy jobs in rural America right now than there are fossil fuel jobs. The portion of green energy jobs is higher in rural areas than in urban areas in most states. And the growth in green jobs is higher in rural areas than it is for urban areas. So we're on a path towards cleaner energy, and that means more good jobs for people in rural America. So there is a lot of hesitancy, there's a lot of fear, and there is a shift from jobs in certain energy sectors to other energy sectors. But when it comes to the potential for workers and for local economies, local communities, it's there, and it's a pretty optimistic picture.
Well, I want to stick with you just a little bit on this, because what you would hear from a lot of the rig workers or a lot of the power plant workers is, number one, you're asking me to do things I don't have the skill set for, and number two, yeah, and I'm going to take a 50% cut in pay if I go and make panels as opposed to working on the rigs. And so, how would you respond to a boilermaker who is transitioning out of Lee Olds in Stanton, North Dakota, or a rig worker in Williston who says, yeah, you're promising all that, but I don't see that in my future?
Yeah, any transition is going to be difficult, and we need training programs. We need to equip those workers who are transitioning with skills, and we need to do that not once they've lost a job, but on the horizon of a new energy revolution where they're still in the job that they have, the job they're used to, and they start building the new jobs, learning how to transition from what they do today to what they'll be able to do tomorrow and for the rest of their career. So that's where workforce development has a role to play. Local leaders have a role to play. Nonprofit leaders in workforce development all can step in and make sure that transition happens smoothly and takes advantage of the potential that's there.
Yeah, I'm going to call on Dr. Cannon. I see her nodding her head in there about this, and ask her, do you hear that a lot among the workforce that you're familiar with? And how do we give them the assurance that their quality of life will not suffer as we're moving through this transition?
Yes, I do hear that a lot. And as Shelly shared, there's a lot of opportunity in clean energy. I mean, that's probably the fastest growing industry right now that we have going on. So when I drive on the countrysides and see all the solar farms, going up, that's job opportunity. So providing them, preparing them with change and letting them know that, hey, we have training programs and we have initiatives in place for helping them to make that transition is going to be very important, because they can still sustain and maintain their quality of life and their lifestyles. We just have to educate them and give them the resources and the tools to help them to be successful in that transitioning. I mean, it's not any different than when we first encountered the technology that we have today in the construction industry. We weren't always like that. In the 70s and the 80s, we didn't have the technology that we're running jobs with now. But we had to train and skill upgrade people to that point. And there was some pushback because for some of those generations, that's not where they wanted to go. But to be marketable and to be competitive and to stay up with times, we had to prepare people for change and help them to overcome their fears of change. But with the right programs in place, right workforce development, the nonprofits that focus on these areas, definitely there will be a lot of opportunity, and there is going to be success for those individuals that are in those areas where these job opportunities are very plentiful.
Well, Neela, I mean, when you look at kind of your statement about, you think that there has to be it's not just the stick of, oh, you may not be able to provide for your family if you don't transition, but the incentive to do exactly what Dr. Cannon's saying and what Shelly said. Look, let's not wait until we shut down the power plant to start training and start having that conversation. How do we incentivize workers to start thinking about this transition now and better prepare them before we get into crisis? And I just want to raise this point, and because I'm going to call on Gabe and Matt too. The experience that we had with retraining from the free trade agreements, and you can argue whether that was good or bad for America's economy, but it certainly displaced many of our textile workers and many of our manufacturing folks who did appliances, good union jobs. And so they were asked to do retraining, and the retraining didn't really work. These communities weren't revitalized. And so how do we get in now in this discussion? And I want to, Neela, and then we'll turn to Matt and Gabe to have them kind of comment on that statement.
I think this conversation is critical, and I think now everyone has it forefront in their conversations and their planning. And I think we have to be proactive and not reactive. So my colleagues that I work with that really focus on clean energy are tackling this on the workforce side every day. I'm proud to report that an organization that I work with, it's one of our partners, Clean Energy Economy Minnesota. They just reported that a third of the jobs in clean energy are located in greater Minnesota, so outside of the Twin Cities area, and that the job growth is about 10% expected here. So, we're seeing some great progress. On regards to being proactive and on the training side, in addition to new hire training, that reskilling to current members, I think, is important and is being focused on. But a new partnership that is still not completely finalized, but definitely in the works, is with Xcel Energy, an energy power company. They are creating a 3 to 4 year training program with the state, and for individuals over 18 for construction and renewable jobs. They're planning on training 200 BIPOC members at Minneapolis-St. Paul in the coming years. So, it's those really purposeful trainings that is linking, like was mentioned before, linking the workers to the companies and to government and the funding to all work together to really make that impact. So I think when I talk to my colleagues, they're excited about that and more training, once again, for new hires, but also really important, the reskilling of current employees, excuse me.
Yeah, Gabe, you want to weigh in on this at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Shelly made a great point. I think framing really matters. And unfortunately, when a lot of people talk about climate and green jobs, a lot of individuals, voters, people across the country hear polar bears. And I have nothing against polar bears. I think they are majestic creatures. But what we need to really remind people is this is about innovation here in America. This is not about necessarily saving the world. This is about your economy, your community, and there's huge potential benefits. I also think we need to remind people this isn't just about solar and wind. I love solar and wind. I think that's great. But when we're talking about clean energy jobs, we're talking about research and development, especially at land-grant universities. We're talking about weatherizing homes. We're talking about advances in agriculture and carbon deposits. We're talking about new opportunities in manufacturing, whether that's an EV battery or whether that's carbon capture technology. And so there are real benefits for your community. There are a wide range of things that you can do. And then the key is going to be, how do you transition people to those jobs? And I think what we have to realize is, for a 32-year-old woman who is, I would argue, at the fairly early to mid stage in her career, retraining might be a great option. But if you're a 59-year-old man who's been doing, spent the last 40 years on your rig or doing something else, retraining might not be what you need at this stage. But that doesn't mean we just leave you. And so I think there's a lot that the government can do on things like wage subsidies, where if you have a job making this and then the transition means you're in a job making this, well, government can step in and help. If you are at a job with certain benefits and your new job doesn't have those benefits, government can step in and help. And we can really aid that transition so people at all stages of their career are taken care of, either put into a new field or helped along the way. And I think there's a lot of opportunity.
Matt, you want to share some perspective here?
Absolutely. And as Gabe pointed out, the innovation that's going to come out of this revolution that is necessary for saving our planet, but it is also a huge moment for us to be a leader in the country on all the innovation pieces that a green economy will bring. The small part of that we focus on are those technology jobs, and those are real. The software jobs, the kinds of automation jobs, the things that will actually run better and more effective wind turbines, or better and more effective testers for homes to understand how efficient they are, better solar trackers. Those kinds of things are software jobs and automation technology jobs and robotics jobs that can be done in rural places. In fact, they are being done in rural places. But the other piece on framing the narrative that Gabe and others have talked about is also about the fact that people are transitioning from those kinds of extraction jobs into technology jobs. We work with a community, Pikeville, Kentucky, which is right in the heart of coal country and has been severely hit by the decline of coal for all the different reasons that coal is declining. But what they realized was a few years ago was that they actually had more people in Pikeville working remotely for tech companies than they had registered coal workers. And it was a huge awakening. And no one believed it at first. And they showed them the numbers again. And so there is a shift in identity. All of us that live in rural places so connect our identity to our work. I grew up and still live in a town that was machine tool and dairy until it wasn't. And so getting out of that mode and into the mode of what can be is super powerful. And so in Pikeville, what did they do? They started a software development group that was focused explicitly on coders that were trained former coal workers. And they took to it great. And they are now doing projects and doing software and developing that innovation for the next generation of jobs right there in Pikeville, Kentucky. There's a whole theory about how kinesthetic workers take to programming really, really well, because it's similar systems thinking, it's similar connection to way things move, whether it's bits or pieces of coal. And so those are things that we're seeing, and it's so important that we get the word out there so that people don't think, oh, they're just saying retraining, that doesn't ever happen to people like me. It is happening, and we can help facilitate that happening more.
One of the things that I think was a missed opportunity, and you heard this a lot when we were tackling the problem of NOx and SOx and regular, ambient air pollutants, whether it's particulates or mercury. Oh, this is going to be a jobs killer. And when you go to a power plant, and I know a little bit about this because I was on the board of directors, about a third of the jobs were all running the emissions part of the power plant. And so this idea that environmental concerns have to be job killers is an old idea, and we absolutely have to kind of get the narrative. But I think the really important part of this dialogue is we can't wait. This can't be leaving people in limbo right now that who say, what about me? What about me? If we have this Build Back Better, or if we have the Green New Deal, or if we have, this transition, I'm going to get left behind, and my middle class or upper middle class lifestyle is not going to be available to me. And some of that is what we would what we would say is a failure to communicate. And I'm not picking on anyone, but every time I hear a public official, when they say, well, what about the workforce? And they say, well, they can make solar panels. It's like fingernails on a chalkboard for people. And I think Dr. Cannon has the formula, which is, and Gabe, where he says, look, you may not have the 59-year-old who wants to be retrained at this point, but we've got to tell parents, whether their kids are 20 or 30 years old, that there's going to be opportunity for their grandkids to live in their communities and for their kids to make a living. That family engagement, I think, is something we don't do enough about. And I think, Dr. Cannon, your work is so critical in involving mothers in doing this, because if a 60-year-old grandpa can look at his 20-year-old grandson and say he can live in Carrington, North Dakota, and help out on the farm occasionally and make a living, that's a big step up. And sustainability on the green effort is going to depend on political sustainability, and political sustainability is going to be built not if the companies are okay with it. Obviously, a lot of them have now signed on. It's going to be whether the workforce sees opportunity. And this messaging is such a big, big part of it, I think. And I think we haven't been very good at it. If you guys have any examples of where that kind of messaging has worked, I think sharing them right now could be really, really valuable. Jump in, anybody.
Messaging is definitely important. I think that is really a very critical component, especially when we talk about careers in construction and engineering. One of the things that I encourage people to do is to take advantage of all the opportunity that we have marked in the industry that has been connected to something significant, like, we have Skills USA programs throughout the United States. All states have those programs. We don't talk about those programs enough. That those conversations take place among the people who are dealing with the programs, members of the programs. But we need to make sure that we get the message and the word out to everybody about why we need to make sure that even in rural communities that we have programs such as Skills USA that provides opportunity for our students to engage in programming that's going to introduce them to some of these careers that we're talking about. We also need to look at that, we have to change our strategies and mindsets of how we market and tell our story. If I want to attract women, then guess what? I got to use the right tools to get the job done. I need people who look like me. If I want my cousins to come, I need to go where my cousins hang out. I got to connect with them, and I got to get on their level, because I've got to get the hooks in them, and I got to have those conversations. We got to get in their face and in their space. And that's what our marketing also has to be designed to meet the need of the targeted audience. And it's going to take the right chemistry, the right people to go do the job. If I want women, I'm not going to send, no offense to anybody, but that bald-headed white guy, I can't send him to the classroom to go talk to a group of girls. That's just not going to work.
Yeah.
It needs to be
Mittie,
a woman.
I would never get between you and a good idea, man. You're the real deal. We're kind of up against the clock. I wanted to just maybe do another round robin, to ask you to offer. I mean, hopefully we have a lot of policymakers. I know we have a lot of policymakers who are listening in, or they have staff listening in. Want you to think about what you want to tell them about the rural workforce and about the future of work in rural America, and how they can participate in the work that you do in making it possible to create these opportunities. And we're going to start with you, Dr. Cannon, and then we'll just go ahead and go through the group here.
Well, I think the listeners have heard where my passion lies, and there's no question about what I'm very passionate about. But on a serious tip, I really feel like that it would be very important if we really rethink our processes and rethink, our path forward of what we're looking at and how we're planning to address the mismatched skill sets, the shortage of skilled workers, and even programming that's going to help us to bridge the gap that we have out there in the industry. And one thing I do know for sure is this: the rural community needs opportunity. They need the construction industry. And so they have something that we need, and we have something that they need. And we have to find a way to come together and tear down those barriers, whatever it is. And we need to do what we need to do by putting the resources in place, executing, following through, and making sure that we create real opportunity, real job with real resources, and put our money where our mouth is, and really make sure that we're providing those resources to help bring and elevate rural America. And that's what my messaging is to everyone, is that we need to come together. There's a time to be competitors, but there's a time to do goodwill. And we're at that point that we need to do goodwill. This is where all nonprofits, government, everybody needs to come together, community members, contractors, business industry, and we need to come together for common cause to attain common goals. And so that's my message I'll leave with you, and I challenge them to do that. If you want to talk more about it, you can always find me on powerup.org, poweruploud.org. I'm happy to talk to you, and we can always meet and chat.
Thanks so much. Neela?
I would say that we need to continue to cultivate an environment to foster our startups, our innovators, our entrepreneurs. We know that that entrepreneurship, that entrepreneurship really is going to drive our economy forward. This is where we need to focus to help us prosper today and into the future. And it's really about, as Dr. Cameron said, bringing everybody together with that common vision, common purpose, bringing some of the stakeholders that we talked about today, our investor community, higher education, our corporate innovators, government, all working together to create this thriving economy to foster entrepreneurship and innovation.
Matt?
So I think the message that I would like to send is: do not underestimate rural people, right? On all kinds of fronts. There has been so many narratives that have crept up over the last 40 years that have affected the willingness for people to believe that rural folks can do extraordinary work. And that includes the kinds of advanced construction jobs that Dr. Cannon is talking about. That includes coding jobs like they're seeing folks transition to in Pikeville from coal working to coding. That includes startups that can go and change marketplaces and bring real wealth to rural communities. All of those work in synergy, but you've got to believe that rural places can produce that kind of talent and ingenuity. I hear too often, even from folks in rural communities, that they tell their young people who are being successful in school or bright, you've got to leave. You got to get out of here as soon as possible. You cannot pursue your dreams here. And that's just not true. And we need to make sure that that narrative is real so that they can find a pathway to realize their ambition and their passion and unlock that talent in rural places. And there are ways to do it. There are ways to do it through working with folks like Dr. Cannon's group, as well as our group. We're both capacity builders, right? We're not out there creating innovation hubs or massive training programs in different places. We're going and working with local leaders who get it, who want to see this, and are just trying to connect to resources or models that are emerging, whether it's in Red Wing, Minnesota, or Pikeville, Wisconsin. Or Pikeville, Kentucky, or Platteville, Wisconsin. These are places that are showing how it can be done, connecting them together, connecting them then to the resources they wouldn't know are available otherwise, and allowing those communities and that rural talent to flourish.
Gabe, you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, I'm actually going to build right off that because, the nice thing about working at a think tank is we are always starting for ideas. And what I'm really hearing today, and I was just looking in the chat, and Neil Belson wrote, how can we replicate the Pikesville, Kentucky example? And what we're seeing is there are pockets of good initiatives, whether it be an entrepreneurship, whether it be a training, whether it be a way to build out broadband. There's pockets of activity happening all over rural America. And I can tell you that federal policymakers, and Senator, I think you contest this too, are starving for ways to take those good examples and spread them across the country. So I love working with One Country because it is such a good forum for individuals on the Zoom and others in the community to say, hey, you've got to pay attention to what's happening here. You've got to pay attention to what's happening there. And policymakers can use that, figure out what's working, and then scale it more appropriately. So yes to what Matt said, keep giving us ideas, and we'll keep trying to get the federal resources to help you out.
Terrific. Shelly?
Sure. When we think about the future of work, there's a tendency to think of robots, automation, high-tech jobs, when really 4 out of the 5 jobs with the most new openings for the next 10 years are low-paying service and retail and care jobs that make less than $30,000 a year. So when we think about improving the future of work for everyone, including people in rural America, it means addressing the job quality crisis and ensuring that those jobs are good jobs and that everyone has access to basic benefits, to a decent income, and that can facilitate the entrepreneurship. That facilitates the new directions, the new growth, the new opportunities to build, strong local communities. I think in the chat, someone mentioned, 75% of the retail and service businesses being owned by some, urban-centered multinational corporation. Those are many of the jobs in rural America. And those jobs are hard to live by and are holding people back from really engaging in communities, from developing new businesses, from being entrepreneurs, from doing all of the things that we need and want to see happen in rural America. So in thinking about kind of the future of work from the policymakers' perspective, I just emphasize again the focus on promoting good jobs, quality jobs, pathways to worker organizing, which can facilitate so many more aspects of a brighter future.
Yeah, I think that we have so many great ideas in the Q&A and the chat, but I really wanted you to hear from these experts and to get yourself thinking. Don asked a question about growing climate solutions and certification inspectors. Absolutely. I'm chairing along with Saxby Chambliss the Bipartisan Policy Center work on forest and agricultural climate solutions, and these markets, getting the certification is going to be critical because the market will collapse if it's not real. And cooperative extension service and all of the kind of traditional things that are institutions that organize are they innovative? Are they nimble enough? Or are they kind of stuck in the same formula? And so there's so much more to talk about. But to me, this starts with believing, as I think Matt said, believing that rural America can do it. that this is not some pipe dream. And so believing in rural America and then figuring out how you can grow that entrepreneurship. People frequently ask about Native American reservations, and I want to comment about that. Way too often it was like, put a factory on the reservation and that's employment. Well, a lot of people don't want to work there. And entrepreneurship, we know, is the path towards independence and economic development and economic growth for so many of our tribal members, and they're doing great work in entrepreneurship. And so, I think that the old formula of, oh, I sure hope that they put a factory there. When I was in the Senate, we have a manufacturer manufactures windows in rural America. They had 80 primary sector jobs open that no one would fill. And so I think that we just have to start not by top down. We're going to create this opportunity for you, but bottom up. We're going to invest in you. We're going to invest in your skills. We're going to invest in your business and your work and your dream. And that's going to grow rural America. And so this is all about investing in people. And that's what we do at One Country. We believe that investment in rural America starts with investing in rural people, whether it's improving healthcare or education, broadband and roads. And you build it there, that things will get better. And so